Today in the Fresh Brew Run Club, my thoughts after running 100 miles in the New Balance Fresh Foam X More V4. Welcome to the Fresh Brew Run Club. So for today's video, I am giving my thoughts after running 100 miles in the Fresh Foam X More V4. So I made an initial video talking about my first run in this shoe, but I also think it's important to run a good amount of miles before you make like a big decision about a shoe. Sometimes you need to break it in, you need to get used to it, you need to get some miles on it. So that's what I did with this shoe. Like I said, I've run 100 miles, including a 32-mile run that I made a video in, so check that out as well. So if you're new to my channel, I make videos about running and coffee from the perspective of an average runner and an average coffee drinker. So that kind of shapes how I look at shoes. I'm not using these shoes to try to qualify for the Olympics, but rather an everyday shoe. I'll get into what I think this shoe is actually for a little bit later in the video, so stay tuned for that. So a couple things I'm going to cover today. I'm going to give a breakdown just of the shoe, starting with the bottom, working my way up to the upper. I'm going to go over what I think this shoe is actually for. Then I'll cover the performance and how it feels on the run, the durability, and then I'll give my concluding thoughts. So let's start with the breakdown, starting with the bottom up. So we have the outsole. They have, I think, either two types of rubber on the outsole or two different colors of rubber, but it's kind of an interesting design. We have these sort of like smaller portions on the upper, and then there's that fresh foam that is poking through there, and then two sort of wider areas of rubber on the heel. It's not one like flat piece of outsole rubber there, so kind of an interesting design. And then you have sort of the main feature of this shoe, which is that fresh foam. This is a big chunk of Fresh Foam X, which is New Balance's like high-tech cushioned foam. So there's a lot of that on the shoe. And then moving to the upper, kind of a typical design. You have this upper, which is just like regular, I don't know, cloth or fabric material on top. There is a little bit of ventilation here in the toe. I'll get to the breathability later in the video, but pretty standard. On the inside, there's a little bit of padding, and the heel is actually kind of hard. There's a little bit of rigidity to the actual heel, which is nice. So your foot is going to fit nice and snug in this shoe. The laces, I think, are a little bit short, but pretty typical laces. I did the runner's knot, so I don't know if you can see that here. I'll try to zoom in, but I did the runner's knot. Everything was fine. I had no heel slip issues. So the main thing with this shoe, like I mentioned, is that midsole foam, but also what is called rocker construction. So you can kind of see here, it has a sort of almost a U shape, which helps you roll through your stride. And me, as a heel striker, I really need this. So I land on my heel, and then it helps me to sort of propel forward, as opposed to a flatter shoe, which is just going to hit the ground and then I got to spring off. This helps me to roll through my stride, which I really liked about this shoe. So what is this shoe for? So in my experience, I am coming from one of my favorite running shoes of all time, the Nike Invincible 1 and 2 are my favorite. The Invincible 3 is okay, but those are the shoes that I'm coming from, which I really liked. This shoe is a little bit different. I would say this shoe is a little more rigid and a little better for like long runs, whereas the Invincible is more for easy runs, recovery runs, going as slow as possible. This will get you a little bit of speed, but like if you're looking to do like a 18-mile tempo run or even like a marathon, you could run your race pace in this shoe. The combination of all this fresh foam plus the rocker, plus it's a little bit more rigid than like a typical like super ultra cushioned shoe. It's going to give you that cushion to get you through long miles, but also has the structure and rigidity where like you're not going to mess up your stride. It's not going to feel squishy. It's not going to feel like you're running in place. The main thing that I notice with this, you don't notice the shoe, which is kind of interesting. With some shoes, it's like you notice how rigid they are, how they sort of slap the ground, or even how cushioned they are. This is like you put it on and after a couple miles, you don't think about the shoe at all, which I think is really good for long runs. Maybe not like a speed workout shoe, definitely not a speed workout shoe or a track shoe, but for someone like me who I'm not looking to go super fast, even on my long runs or maybe even my tempo runs, this shoe is fine. So I would say it's very versatile, more geared towards those longer distances. If you want to pick up the speed a little bit, it can absolutely handle those type of workouts. So next up, we'll talk about the performance on the run. I kind of teased this a little bit, but I noticed that I didn't notice this shoe. As a heel striker, that rocker construction is awesome. It's very different than a lot of shoes that I've worn before. I feel like I'm running a little more up on the front of my foot than I would with like any other type of shoe. So I really like that. I ran 32 miles in these these shoes in a previous video that I recorded, and my feet hurt a little bit, but I think that's a result of just running so many miles, but it wasn't really a factor in my run at all. So they can last on super long runs. It is a little bit on the heavy side. Again, I'm not running super fast, so I didn't notice it too much, but if you do prefer a lighter weight shoe, you might want to look at something else, but for me, it wasn't a problem. One of the downsides with this shoe, it does run a little bit hot, so it's springtime in Michigan. It's starting to get a little bit warmer, but even on like a 65-degree day, I noticed my feet were a little bit on the warm side. For me, that's not like a huge deal. I just kind of get used to it and just deal with that sort of temperature. But if you are sensitive to having hot feet while you're running, you might want to be careful with this shoe. It is a little bit hot. There is some like ventilation on the toe, but I don't think it's a very breathable shoe. That was kind of the only downside. The laces are a little bit short if you do the runner's knot like I did, but I can still double knot it, so no issues there. So then going into the durability, really no problems with this shoe on the upper. I have no visible damage. One thing I tend to do is kick the inside of my heel area here. It's just a little bit dirty, but nothing is ripping, nothing is tearing. The only really visible sign of damage is kind of in the forefoot middle of the outsole area. I'm starting to get to that fresh foam. I'm kind of wearing it down a little bit. I don't think it's a big deal. On my heel strike, the rubber is fine. It's definitely like smoothed down a little bit, like if someone took some sandpaper, which really is just the sidewalks that I'm running on are kind of wearing that down, but I think there's enough rubber on the bottom of this shoe where it's not going to be an issue for, I don't know, at least another 100 miles, maybe more, we'll see. But otherwise, I'm not noticing any like cracking on the midsole or anything is ripping or tearing or glue coming apart. Like, it seems like it's a pretty high quality, well-built shoe. So overall, to wrap this up, I really like this shoe. It was a lot of fun to run in. I've never run in a New Balance shoe outside of some cross-country spikes I had my senior year in high school, but I really did enjoy this. I think the Fresh Foam X is cushioned enough, but also durable enough to give you sort of the best of both worlds. You get that comfort, but you also get the rigidity of a shoe that is gonna really sort of hold its form over the course of a very long run. So this is definitely a shoe I would recommend as just like an everyday trainer, especially if you like a little more cushion. But yeah, overall, I really like this shoe. I was very impressed. Something I definitely want to keep running in. So that'll wrap up my review. If you've run in the More V4, let me know what you think. If you have any questions about it, I'm happy to answer any in the comments below. But that is today's video. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you soon.